Hello and welcome to News Now on TV360 Nigeria. I am Annetta Felix. The National Judicial Court, NJC, has issued a 7-day ultimatum to Walter Onoen, the suspended Chief Justice of Nigeria, to respond to a petition filed against him by the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation. This was a resolution of their emergency meeting over the Onoen case and was contained in a press statement signed by the NJC Information Director, Tony Sojioye. Ibrahim Mohammed, the acting CJN, has also been given a 7-day ultimatum to respond to a petition against him over an alleged breach of NJC rules. The council explains that it abridged the usual response period from 14 to 7 working days for the honorable justices to respond in view of the gravity of the matter. The NJC is scheduled to reconvene on February 11, 2019. The presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar, has petitioned France, Germany, European Union, United States of America, and the United Kingdom over an alleged undemocratic actions and infractions of President Muhammadu Buhari. In the petition, Atiku listed the alleged infractions to include the suspension of Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Walter Onoen, the purchase of Tucano aircraft, disregard for orders of the courts, among others. In reaction to his petition, the federal government has warned that the international community should not interfere in the internal affairs of Nigeria. Of all the topics dominating the country's political space, the suspension of Walter Onoen as the Chief Justice of Nigeria has been making headlines in the past few days. President Muhammadu Buhari had sworn in Justice Tanko Muhammad to act as Chief Justice of Nigeria in place of Justice Onoen, and this has been generating reaction among Nigerians. This next report has the details.
The suspension of the country's top judge, Walter Onoen, has been the talk of the town since it was announced by President Muhammadu Buhari. The president's decision has generated opposing views between the ruling government and some members of opposition parties across the country. One of them is the major contender of the president in the forthcoming election, Atiku Abubakar. The PDP presidential candidate describes the suspension as illegal and calls on all Nigerians to rise in defense of democracy.
The universal condemnation of this unlawful act by all Nigerians, as well as the international community. I need to state that this latest action by General Muhammadu Buhari falls squarely within the pattern of executive lawlessness that has now been firmly turned into statecraft by the APC government. The serial disregard of court orders and consequent violation of constitutionally guaranteed human rights of our citizens confirms beyond all doubt that General Buhari and his government would rather obey their own whims and operate by separate rules outside the well-established constitutional order.
But the government has continued to defend its decision. The Minister for Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, dismisses claims that the suspension of the CJN is political.
The suspension of Justice Onoen is a consequence of his breach of the Code of Conduct for Public Officers and has nothing to do with forthcoming elections. Neither does it signify the onset of dictatorship or tyranny, as some have insinuated. It amounts to irresponsible extrapolation to say that the suspension of Justice Onoen is the onset of dictatorship.
The international community have also been reacting to the matter, but this group of protesters involving market women, students and artisans have marched to the American embassy in Abuja to protest what it calls U.S. interference in Nigeria's domestic affairs. Instead, they want the U.S. government to support any attempt by President Buhari to fight corruption in the country.
It is quite worrisome for the #1 law officer in the country to act in such a manner. The implication of this is that the hopes of the common man on the street have been dashed because the judiciary, which is supposed to be the hope of the masses, has indeed turned to the nemesis of the masses. The rot in the judicial system is such that it will take the grace of God for sanity to return to the judiciary in Nigeria due to the level of corruption in the system that has resulted in money-induced judgments from the magistrate court even to the Supreme Court. In Nigeria, some judges live above their means and see themselves as mini-gods. They give judgment to the highest bidder in most instances, not minding the consequences of the actions.
The ambassadors may wish to know that there are stipulated penalties for violation of the CCB law in Nigeria, regardless of the position the individual occupies, as the law is no respecter of persons. The case of the Chief Justice of Nigeria presented us a very challenging circumstance, where the chief law officer in Nigeria, for inexplicable reasons, decided to act in a contrary and morally bankrupt manner by not declaring part of his asset. This act he attributed to forgetfulness.
The federal government have also received the backing of another non-governmental group in Lagos. The group says Onohen lacks the moral capacity to head the country's judiciary.
We all gather here to express our disgust with the action of some segments of the country that have viewed the action of the president in placing the Chief Justice of Nigeria on suspension for false declaration of assets in contravention of the Code of Conduct Bureau Act for public office holder in the country. Nigeria is not a country where anyone should view as above the law, as the law is no respecter of person. And what an irony that the chief law officers of the country will violate the law and will still want to evade justice. If this should ever happen, then Nigeria is no longer a country but a banana republic.
It is the first time in Nigeria's history that the #1 judicial officer will be suspended and tried over false assets declaration. How all these will play out will be a test to the nation's troubled judiciary. Adekunle, TV360 Nigeria.
The House of Representatives has approved the sum of 30,000 naira as the new national minimum wage. The approval followed the adoption of the report by the ad hoc committee set up on the new minimum wage bill presented to the National Assembly by President Muhammadu Buhari on Thursday. The lawmakers unanimously approved the 30,000 naira recommendation by the committee, in line with the resolution by the tripartite committee set up by the president. This is coming over a year after the tripartite committee began the clamor for a new national minimum wage in Nigeria. Nigeria is now the 144th most corrupt country in the world, according to the Transparency International Corruption Perception Index for 2018. This marks an improvement from its ranking at the 148th place in 2017. Nigeria shares its new position with 4 other countries: Kenya, Mauritania, Guatemala, and Comoros. The managing director of the agency, Patricia Morera, says the CPI released today revealed that the continued failure of most countries to significantly control corruption contributed to a crisis of democracy around the world. The presidential candidate of the ruling All Progressives Congress, President Muhammadu Buhari, is calling for the support and cooperation of voters in the forthcoming election. The president was speaking at the closing ceremony of Train the Trainer workshop on voter education, organized by the APC Directorate of Election Planning and Monitoring in Abuja.
As the general elections draw near, many parties are beginning to hasten up their preparations towards the big day. This is the closing ceremony of Train the Trainer workshop on voter education, organized by the All Progressives Congress's Directorate of Election Planning and Monitoring. The presidential candidate of the party, President Muhammadu Buhari, while addressing the participants, charged them to convince voters on the need to vote APC in the forthcoming elections.
Be trained to go back and be in charge of our constituencies from local governments upwards. Please try and convince our ordinary voters for the sacrifice they are going to make, that as far as this system is concerned, they and I are the same. I have one vote and they have one vote. Make them feel they are important enough as Nigerian citizens. Therefore, we need their support and cooperation. Let them come and vote for us. We don't have money to give everybody. We should use the money for infrastructure. We will try and do your roads. We'll try and do the rail, and we will bring power.
The APC Director of Election Planning and Monitoring, Babatunde Fashola, who also addressed the trainers, urged them to train other APC volunteers at their respective constituencies.
We are going to go back home to go and educate all our people in the languages they understand most and in the way that is local and unique to them to pass this message around.
At the end of the event, the participants of the training were awarded with a certificate of participation. The presidential election is slated for February 16, 2019, and so far with trainings such as this, the All Progressives Congress have been expressing optimism that the party would emerge victorious. Unyi Adekunle, TV360, Nigeria.
Around 30,000 people fled into Cameroon from the Nigerian city of Ran during the weekend, fearing an attack by Boko Haram militants, the United Nations Refugee Agency said on Tuesday. The UNHCR spokesman, Baba Baloch, told a regular UN briefing in Geneva that the exodus followed the departure of Cameroonian forces who had moved to secure the city following an attack by Boko Haram on Ran on January 14. Refugees say that Boko Haram had promised to return to the city, which originally had an estimated population of about 80,000. So residents are on the run to save their lives. Immediately after the January 14 attack, 9,000 people fled into Cameroon, but they were refused asylum and sent back to Nigeria by Cameroonian authorities. The humanitarian and protection challenges presented by the crisis in the Lake Chad region remains urgent and require active collaboration by affected countries to bring relief and stability to the region. Now, these were the words of Nigeria's Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, at the ministerial meeting on protection in the Lake Chad Basin and the launch of the 2019 to 2021 Humanitarian Response Strategy for Northeast Nigeria. TV360's Tunji Oye has the report.
Of insurgency in Nigeria with the crisis extending to our neighbors. No thanks to the gradual decline of the Lake Chad, which has also contributed to the humanitarian crisis and the economic hardship in the sub-region. Here in this hall, the four affected countries of Nigeria, Cameroon, Chad, and Niger are meeting. This is to launch another phase of humanitarian response strategy for the northeast of Nigeria between 2019 and 2021, and also to discuss the protection of citizens in the Lake Chad Basin.
It is now evident that the Lake Chad itself has become considerably reduced in size. It's about 1/10 of its former size. And of course, the implications of that for all of the economic activity around the Lake Chad. And of course, this in itself, on account of climate change and all of those and all of the related problems, has played a significant role in diminishing the economic opportunities around the Lake Chad Basin. So many of those who live around there are simply adrift and largely impoverished. There are, of course, also, as we've heard already, clear links between the weak socioeconomic state of affairs in that area and the Boko Haram insurgency over the last decade. As part of what has become a vicious cycle, the insurgency itself has worsened economic conditions through the destruction of lives and property, the disruption of livelihoods, and a catastrophic humanitarian crisis.
I would like to express my heartfelt solidarity with the population in Nigeria, Cameroon, Chad, and Nigeria, who have been directly or indirectly affected by the Boko Haram crisis, which is now in its 10th year. This conflict has imposed untold suffering on millions of people, including women and children. Within a climate of insecurity and complete impunity, human rights violations, including sexual and gender-based violence, are systematically committed while communities are being destroyed with a net negative impact on development.
This document is a collaborative effort between the government of Nigeria and our development partners. It is aimed at ameliorating the sufferings of the people of the Northeast caused by an insurgency that has resulted in widespread humanitarian crisis, impacting negatively on the lives of millions of Nigerians.
About $100 million has been spent so far in the last 3 years by international donor community to address humanitarian challenges in the Northeast. But this figure seems not enough to end hunger and diseases in the affected areas.
The end of 2018 and the beginning of 2019 has probably been the most challenging period for the humanitarian response since those dark days of 2016. Since November, almost 80,000 people have been newly displaced. Humanitarian agencies have lost access to over 100,000 people. Humanitarian facilities, including health centres and schools, have been burnt, looted and destroyed. Thousands of refugees are fleeing into Cameroon and Chad, and 2 young aid workers were brutally murdered. As we look towards 2019, and dare I say cast our eyes even beyond the imminent elections, I think it is worth drawing out 3 lessons that we have learnt over the past 3 years regarding humanitarian action here in Nigeria.
Who is actually at the core of what we are talking about here, and it is the civilians who bear the brunt of the insecurity that we have seen since 2009 and that has affected and spilled over also into neighboring countries, into those 4 countries that are represented here today. And it is these civilians that bear the brunt of it, and we will hear the statistics. It's at least 7.1 million people in the 3 states of northeast Nigeria, Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe, that are in need of humanitarian assistance.
The 4 countries have once again agreed to collaborate in putting an end to insurgency in the northeast of Nigeria and around the borders. This is to address the rising cases of displaced persons and minimize the increasing rate of refugees in the affected countries. From Abuja, Sunji Oye, TV360 News.
The Nigerian Medical Association NMA Lagos chapter is calling for the improvement of policy implementation in the health sector. The members of the association made this call at a summit held in Lagos. According to them, the summit will improve productivity and service delivery in the health sector.
The importance of the health sector in the country cannot be overemphasized. Hence, a need for a friendly existence between the government and the stakeholders in the health sector. This is the reason for this gathering. Stakeholders, medical practitioners, and government officials are gathered at the 2019 Leadership and Health Summit organized by the Nigerian Medical Association in Lagos. The members want the government to create an enabling environment encouraging private sector inclusion in the health sector.
It's clear that we've been having issue in achieving the universal health coverage. And just currently, we have compulsory health in Lagos State that is brought to law by for LASHMA and the health scheme to commence. There are a bit of issues with the formation of the policy. For instance, we have a situation where NMA is not part of the board of a health scheme. I mean, the Nigerian Medical Association, still by law, is the custodian of the people's health. And the essence of putting the association in a board of policy or decision-making body is for us to have somebody that can challenge when things goes wrong.
A lot of the crises come to be because of problem of resource management. Some human attitudinal aspects come in when government don't move or respond or react early or promptly and keep on procrastinating, let me use the term, rather than quickly moving in. But in the case of health, there are ways around all that. If we can appreciate that health can be managed as a business and ought to be managed as a business, albeit a social business, in the sense that there will be supply side and there will be a demand side. We just need to ensure that both are at their optimum level. What government needs to do principally is to provide an enabling environment for both sides.
On the other hand, the governments are also advocating for good teamwork and efficient leadership role in the health sector.
As leaders in their sector, one key management responsibility is to ensure that our procurement system is safeguarded. Because whatever system you adopt will eventually translate to what gets into the stomach of the patient. And so the way we procure our drugs must be streamlined to ensure technical efficiency and financial efficiency, so that one, the quality is guaranteed along the logistic pipelines from the point of procurement, and that we must procure where possible from the manufacturers, and where the manufacturers are not in country, we must procure from distributors or sales agents that have gotten manufacturer's authorization.
The leadership is actually being implemented now. Now, this course that is going on will help to open the eyes of the doctors even more to the potential which is within them, how they can take the mantle and be real consultants in their chosen field, not necessarily in as per specialty, but consultants in the hospitals who will be able to take charge of whatever comes their way, not only in terms of clinical training, but in terms of mentorship, in terms of carrying the whole hospital along.
In recent times, there has been an increasing level of doctors' resignation across the country. Summits like this is hoping to put an end to this trend as well as address other challenges facing the sector. Adishawa Udushoga, TV360 in Nigeria.
We'll be right back after this break. Do stay with us.
In the last 3 years, we have built a multi-purpose center, which is the envy of all in our constituency. And I can tell you that the people who are living there are already enjoying it.
Guy, do you think what this man just said is true? See, I seriously doubt. I'm sure it's one of those their silly lies.
And wait, do you know there's a way to find out if these things he's saying is true or not? This is the Construct app. It gives people like us a sure way to track implementation of constituency projects. It gives valid and verified information on location of projects, amounts allocated, amount funded, the level of job done, and even the profiles of concerned legislators. You and I can post directly on this app.
Are you serious?
This is the go-to app if you want to know how our Commonwealth is being expanded by the government.
Wow. Let's even see if what this man said is true. Show me.
The Construct app is developed by Other Paper Nigeria with support from USAID and is available on both Google Play Store and Apple Store.
And it's true.
Of course, I told you.
You're welcome back, and we have Oyin Adekule for the news in business. Hello, Oyin.
Hi, Aneta.
So, PENCOM, the National Pension Commission, has just announced that they were able to recover millions of naira. And how exactly were they able to do that?
You're very correct, Aneta. The National Pension Commission has recovered 564.67 million naira in pension contributions and interest totaling from defaulting employers during the third quarter of 2018. In its 2018 third quarter report, the NPC said it engaged the services of recovery agents to recover the outstanding pension contributions and penalties from the defaulting employers. PENCOM said the affected employers were issued with demand notices to remit the outstanding pension contributions after their liabilities had been established by the agents. It said the recovered contributions in the quarter represented a principal contribution of 199.01 million naira and a penalty of 365.67 million naira. And President Muhammadu Buhari is advocating for continued collaboration among African countries to attain sustainable growth in the region. Speaking at the opening ceremony of the Nigeria International Petroleum Summit 2019 in Abuja, the president, represented by Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Ibe Kachuku, says the synergy would create wealth and value in the continent. He further advised that the oil and gas sector industry needs to be not just revenue earners, but an enabler for African economic development.
Africa, the time has come. The time can never be better. The realities are dawned on us because, quite frankly, very soon, unless we protect our border posts, like many countries are doing, unless we begin to look more to the continent, unless we begin to look more to financing that we can find locally, unless we begin to look for African financial entities to help us develop the key infrastructure that we need in this sector, we would have lost a huge opportunity. And then technology, of course, is attacking us at a very fast pace. Like people keep saying, at the rates electric cars are moving in, at the rates solar power is moving in, if we do not move very quickly, we'll be bundled with a huge amount of growing resource, which even when exploited will be worthless. Look at the price of oil over the last 5 years and the performances. Look at the projections over the next 3 years. Something urgent needs to be done for Africa, and we cannot do it independently alone. We need to collaborate with ourselves.
Let's now turn our attention to the stock market reports right after this break. The bears continue to dominate the Nigerian stock market for the second consecutive day as the all-share index falls by 0.53% to close at 11.626 trillion naira. The summary of today's trading activity shows that over 300 million shares were sold to the tune of 1.912 billion naira in 3,773 deals. That's 77 deals rather. The top fallers today are Nigerian breweries, up from the consumer sector, while the banking industry, Zenith Bank PLC, Guarantee Trust Bank and Access Bank PLC are also following suit. We see Zenith Bank PLC losing 4 kobo to close at 22.95 naira, and also on the list is Guarantee Trust Bank and Access Bank closing at 33.8 naira and 6.05 naira respectively. On the flip side, PZ Cussons Nigeria PLC, Red Star Express PLC, Cadbury Nigeria PLC and UAC and Property Development Company are the percentage gainers, increasing by 7.52, 10%, 2.04 and 9.55% respectively. On the global stock market, the Dow Jones ends on a high today by 2.31%. The Financial Times and London Stock Exchange FTSE also managed to keep its head above water, and as it gained by 1.29%. Nikkei is also in that light, also increasing by 0.08%. Now that's all on the stock market today. It's over to you, Aneta.
Well, if you ask me, I would say it's not a bad trading day today. I mean, the bears are actually dominating, rather the bulls are dominating in the Nigerian stock market. And we see so clearly in the global stock. You know, first of all, looking at the FTSE, we see that investors are actually optimistic as the no Brexit deal, you know, is actually taking place in London. And despite the fact that Asian markets are generally bearish due to US-China trade talks, we see that Nikkei is increasing, exactly as you said, by 0.08%.
That's very correct, Aneta.
So after this break, we'll return with updates around Africa. Do stay with us.
Corruption not in my country.
What do you want to buy?
Potato. Small baskets. I want plantain. But why your plantain can't hard like this? Madam, now the outside hard. Inside there, it is very soft.
Madam, wallahi make her no buy. Make her show you something. What? What in this one? Madam, this one now the chemical where they put on for the plantain make ripe up.
Hey? So you dey put chemical for plantain where people go chop? No water, no be chemical.
Madam, water. You know say Pela I don't talk and say water and not be enemy. Drink am.
Where you collect that water, drink am.
I just stop finish. See my belly. It don't big. I just stop drink water finish.
Wake your drink am now. I dey sell am plantain, I go come put am for chemical because I want to make a ripe go. That's why I talk now corruption. Corruption. Not be for this kaswa, come not be for this country. Now me take am.
Corruption not in my country.
Stop corruption now.
The main opposition party in Cameroon says its leader, Maurice Kamto, has been arrested. The Movement for the Rebirth of Cameroon MRC party says Kamto was detained along with 2 other party members in the city of Douala. Kamto urged protesters to join demonstrations against President Paul Biya last Saturday, during which the security forces used tear gas and live ammunition. Liverpool and Manchester City will resume their fight for Premier League supremacy in a midweek round of fixtures clouded by the suspected death of Cardiff striker Emiliano Sala. Now, the Bluebirds are in action for the first time since the plane carrying Sala disappeared over the Channel Islands a week ago. A minute silence will be held before all Premier League games this week in honor of Salah and the plane's pilot, David Ibbotson. Now, once the action gets underway, though, Arsenal have to be ruthless in the fight for Champions League qualifications, as victory will take them level on points with 4th place Chelsea, who visit Bournemouth on Wednesday. Now, that's all for now on News Now on TV360 Nigeria. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.